Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. Today is Monday, April 18th, 2022, 10 a.m. Central, or just after, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. What do we got going on today? We're looking at a section of the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide, the section on land adventures, which we started looking at last week and found that it's a pretty large section. As we came upon the section on getting lost, we stopped the show last week and decided to pick up there this week. So what's that all about? The usual shenanigans. It's weird too because I ran over this quote which I had seen in many places attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I mocked the quote somewhat. And then I got a little notification from Facebook saying it's a misattribution, that people make it all the time, blah, blah, blah. The quote, not of course, the quote was, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." I'm a fan of The Blacklist television show, and I try to catch up with it when I can. And in a recent episode, Raymond Reddington expressed that sentiment. And so I looked it up to see who said it, and it was widely attributed to Ralph Waldo Emerson. But then Facebook said, no, no, no. There was a link to a fact-checking site which clearly states that this one particular scholar whose life work is looking at Ralph Waldo Emerson said, no, there's no evidence that it was his. In fact, there's a 1903 poem titled Wind Wafted Wildflowers by Muriel Strode, in which that is like the opening line, or a line. Don't quote me on that. In any event, it's an interesting sentiment, to which I added bug spray. Don't forget the bug spray. And a phone charger. Also mints. My buddy Jason, owner of Lake Geneva Games, says, what about a towel? Dan Goodmanson made a good point, saying, great example of metaphor and terrible literal advice. How many people have died on the Appalachian Trail from this inspiration? Well, he left an opening for me because, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, uh, I read A Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson, which was later made into a Robert Redford, Nick Nolte movie. Although they were about 20 years too old for the parts, because Bryson did the walking and the writing when he was around 40, and Redford was 60, mid 60s, 70, something when he made the movie. I understand why he made the movie. It's on the page. It's a fantastic book in dramatic irony. And it's a wonderful read, and you should definitely read it. A Walk in the Woods. But I pointed out also to Dean that I've heard it said that not long before they died on Mount Everest, those climbers were some of the most motivated people in the world. That is a quote from someone. Maybe I'll look it up later. In any event, great book. I suggested he read it. Gave him a link to the wiki page on it so he could check it out. I suggest everybody read it. It's very good. I uh, I won't put a link in the show notes. I probably should. Maybe I will. Just the wiki link. I don't do general links to everything I talk about on the show, because sometimes it's more about the thing and not about the buying of it. And honestly, it's an older book, but it was very well received, and in all likelihood, 2 out of 3, 1 out of 3, just making up numbers here. Thrift stores or used bookstores will probably have a copy of it. A Walk in the Woods. In any event, kind of leads well into getting back to our little discussion on land adventures, according to first edition AD&D. Sarah in the chat says, "I will not get lost. Here I am now. Entertain me." Okay, I'll help you reach your nirvana. Yeah, another pun. There you go. It's what I do. It's not my fault. They just come so naturally. Becoming lost. Let's have a look. A look right in the old section of the DMG and see what we got. Any party not guided by a creature knowledgeable of the countryside through which the party is moving, or which has not followed, or which is not following a well-defined course, a river, a road, or the like, or which is not using a well-drawn and correct map, might become lost. This is determined prior to the commencement of a day's movement. Determination is based on the terrain. And if you were watching last week, you've seen these different terrain types mentioned: plain, scrub, forest, rough, desert, hills, mountains, and marsh. And as you can see from the table there, chance of becoming lost on a plain, just 1 in 10. The most egregious in the forest, where visibility is limited both in all directions and up. Don't forget, because if you can't see the sun or the stars at night, sun in the daytime, then 7 in 10 chance of becoming lost. Direction, any. This is the direction you'll wind up going when you become lost. Maybe not even knowing you're lost. So it says, to find the direction of movement if a party is lost, roll a d6, 1 and 3 indicating left, 4 and 6 indicating right. Each hex space is 60 degrees. If a loss of direction of 120 degrees is possible, roll a second d6, 1 and 3, indicating a 60 degree direction lost, 4 and 6 indicating 120. In any direction, loss is possible. Roll a single d6 with the results being read off clockwise, considering the intended direction of travel as 12 o'clock, and giving 2 chances for complete loss and movement in the exact opposite direction. Thus, 1 equals right ahead, 2 equals right behind, 3 to 4 directly behind, 5 left behind, 6 left ahead, i.e. there is no chance of the party ever accidentally moving in the desired direction when the die indicates the condition of being lost exists. Direction of lost movement is illustrated below. Well, it's not actually illustrated below. In this sense, it is illustrated in the right-hand column of the same page. Direction of desired travel. There you go. Good old hexes, baby. Can you get lost in a dungeon where we're using squares? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. What if it's a maze? Amazing. Let's close that down a little bit more. All right. Try that again. I moved this and it didn't work very well. We've seen that, so let's talk about procedures for lost parties. Let me edge this over so I'm not completely lost in regard to the camera. As soon as the die roll indicates the party is lost, determine the direction. If it is onto a space which has previously been traveled over and mapped by the party, then they will recognize that they became lost. Tell them that they moved in X direction rather than that which was desired. But they've seen landmarks and realized their error. In the woods, a fallen log, recognizable rock structure, maybe something like that. Tell them that they moved in X direction rather than that which was desired, but they've seen landmarks and realized their error. If movement is into an error where the party has not already been and mapped, then immediately roll again to determine if the party will be lost the next day also. If no such lost direction is indicated, then the party will realize it has made an error the next day, but meanwhile describe the terrain as if they had actually moved into the desired direction. Better map in pencil. You might have to erase what you drew as terrain in dead ahead direction, and then you're actually forward and left, or back and left, or not directly behind, because if you just came from that direction, won't you recognize that you're lost? Let's get to that. I.e., as if they had not been lost with regards to the direction. This will, of course, result in the erroneous mapping of a space until corrected. If the party will also be lost the following day, the procedure above is followed until they are no longer lost. At that point, they will realize that they have not been moving in the desired direction or series of directions, but they will not know just where they became lost. They will have to backtrack and attempt to locate the last space which they mapped correctly and go on again from that place. It must be understood that parties following a correct map will never become lost. Procedures are only for exploration of unmapped territory. We've still got time today. Let's talk a bit about rest. Movement rates are postulated on sufficient daily rest periods, so as to obviate the necessity for any protracted rest periods of a day or more during the course of any journey. If normal movement rate is exceeded, however, then special rest periods in addition to any subsumed brief breaks in travel are required. This is detailed below. Forced movement. This is not necessarily to say that you're being compelled to move by someone else. A forced march is when you force yourself, for instance, to press on, make better time, maybe to catch up with a group like our trio in the Two Towers, chasing after the orcs carrying the halflings. It is possible to make forced marches up to twice the distance shown for daily movement rate. Such forced movement increases the daily rate in 10% increments from 10% to 100% at the option of the party to a maximum of double normal movement rate. But as soon as a total of 100% of additional normal movement rate is reached, or as soon as the party determines to assume non-forced movement, whichever first occurs, a mandatory rest period must be enforced. Rest period depends upon the total percentage of forced movement. 10 to 30%, an hour per 10%. 40 to 60%, 2 hours per 10%. 70 to 100%, 3 hours per 10%. To find the time required for enforced rest, simply find the total percentage of rest time and deduct this from normal daily movement rate. Thus, 30% means that 30% of the movement of the next day is deducted, as the party rested during that period. At 3 hours per 10% increment of forced movement, 70% means 210%. So 2 full days plus 10% of a third day must be spent in rest from a forced march where you exceeded your normal movement by 70% or doubled it even. Failure to rest after normal movement is equal to 100% means that beasts of burden have a cumulative chance of dropping dead of 10% per 10% increment of additional movement of any sort. So, double movement, you kill your horse or your mule or whatever, ox. Other creatures lose one level of ability or hit die in the same manner until 0 is reached and exhaustion kills them. Such loss of vitality, whether by beast of burden creature or character, requires a full 8 hours of additional rest for each such 10% increment hit die or level of ability lost. For example, a 12th level fighter who moves an additional 90% of movement after exceeding normal movement by 100% must rest 72 hours consecutively in order to regain 12th level of ability. Prior to that period of rest, the character is effectively 3rd level. So there you go. A whole fatigue exhaustion thing built right into the land travel section, which basically puts you well off your game when it comes to combat. If we're doing that with other creatures, I would imagine a thief only be able to climb or pick locks at a reduced level. Magic users, can they cast spells or only as if at a lower level? Does it affect the spells they can cast at all? So at a 3rd level, you can only cast 2nd level spells, right? Or can you still cast whatever spells you could cast at 12 level, but effectively as if you were 3rd level, in other words, in regard to range, duration? I don't know. Up to you how you want to read that. I'm not sure there's a section that details it in that manner, but I would be loath to not have that affect spellcasters in a way as well. This exhaustion affects your mind and your body and your spirit. So if we're going to penalize the fighter, I think we got to penalize every other class, 12th to 3rd level, in the same way. Adventures in the air is the next section. We won't go into that at this time because this was adventures on land. And that's where we're going to stop for the day in regard to this beautiful section. Where are we at? Well, we still got time. So, are there any questions in the chat regarding any portion of this? What are your feelings on reducing the level of non-fighters in a similar way that you reduce the fighter? If a fighter of 12th level can only fight as if 3rd level because of that extended movement, that forced march, do we also do something to the magic users, to the thief, to the clerics? Can you forget spells because your mind is so overworked, so fatigued, so tired? Certainly post something in the comments if you're checking this out on YouTube. Let me know what you think. What if they are separated while lost? You know, that's a good point too. This doesn't address that specifically, but I would suggest that if you're rolling a lost roll for a group, you may wish to do it if at some point the party splits, add an extra roll, or if you haven't rolled yet for the possibility of becoming lost, roll it during the time when they're separated from one another. And If the group roll says that they're lost, roll individually for the two split groups or individuals for their for the direction in which they become lost. Let them wander away from each other. If they both wander in the same direction, have them find one another. I would anyway. I don't want to bog a game down too much in that sort of thing. But let's face it, it becomes its own game in a way, and I think it could be fun to have that as part of the story that comes out of gameplay. Without those roles, you wouldn't have gotten somebody lost, or somebody would not have become lost. And that can be a very interesting situation. Maybe there are things to find while lost. Maybe because of the way you set things up on your map, they become lost and wander into something that they had not been looking to find. And it becomes an interesting scenario as well. So, yeah, post up in the comment section if you have any things to say about being lost or the effects of being lost on level of various player characters, and the separation idea too, because that's an interesting concept. Adds the random needed. Agreed. Good show. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And I will at this point say thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Thank you to those in Twitch, and thank you if you're catching up with this on YouTube, because that's a thing too. Let me do this. Here on the OK Grognard Show today, we were looking at the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide section on land adventures, where we finished up. The next section is air adventures. I'm not sure if we'll get right to that. I've got a couple other things in mind that I wanted to discuss in new episodes too. We'll see where it goes. Do some research on a few things this week and then discuss things. I do want to say thank you to everybody who tuned into the show. The shows are streamed live on Twitch each Monday at 10 a.m. Central or soon thereafter. And it's then archived on YouTube. If you catch it on Twitch, please do follow the channel and chime in on the stream chat. Let us know who you are and where you're at and what you think and what you play. And if you catch up with it on YouTube, please by all means subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell so you get updates whenever a new video is uploaded. And give us a thumbs up on any videos you like and enjoy. Please do leave comments. If you have anything to say on the show's theme or just the show in general, it'd be much appreciated. Thanks to our Patreon supporters, too. Links provided in the show notes. Tom Tullis of Fat Dragon Games, Rick Hershey of Fat Goblin Games, Carlos Lysing of Castle Entertainment, Heath Farndon of the Antipodean D20, Dave O'Brien of 4 Quacks Games, and Shane Bradley, DM Extraordinaire. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.